Welcome back. The fun is just about to begin. Hope everybody enjoyed the bye week. I think that collectively we all needed it. Players, reporters, fans, coaches, you name it. Twitter. Twitter needed the bye week. Although I don't know if Twitter took the bye week because I logged on a couple times and it just seems that they're surrounding this 49ers team right now. And maybe this is a universal truth, but there's a compulsion for people to have a take on absolutely everything when it's just not warranted to need a take. I mean, these are long NFL seasons. They are marathons, they aren't sprints. The 49ers have finished 5 games. That means that there are 12 games left to play. For perspective, the college football regular season typically is 12 games long. So if this were college, the 49ers would be entering their season opener. That means that we still have a lot of football left, yet people want to, and this happens every week, it happens every drive, it happens every quarter, it happens every practice and training camp. People want to make something bigger and more meaningful than it actually is when we just have to sit back, be patient, and see what's going on. So, right now, the 49ers, if we sit back and analyze what's happened and what's still in front of them, they're 2-3. They're out of the playoff picture if the season ended today. But again, the good news for them is the season doesn't end today. There are still 12 games left. And more good news for the 49ers, they're only half a game out of that final wild card spot. So, as you can see, when you dispassionately look at what's going on here, there's still a lot of football left to be played. And that's how the 49ers are treating the situation. And you just wish that social media would too. That's why there's no massive quarterback upheaval or change on the horizon. That's why the 49ers will continue moving forward with the plan that they orchestrated before the start of this season. That means Jimmy Garoppolo is your starter. Trey Lance gets situational play. I think the 49ers definitely should and will give Trey Lance more situational play. Kyle Shanahan is trying to appeal and satisfy several different constituencies right now. He's trying to satisfy the win now constituency, which you have to attack in the NFL when you have a good roster. And the 49ers, guess what? They still have a good roster. So he's trying to go for the best chance to win every single week. It's very clear that Jimmy Garoppolo still gives the 49ers that, but he's also trying to build for the future. And he's also trying to satisfy the fact that the 49ers did spend such immense draft capital on Trey Lance. And that means that he has to get some return on investment from him now. And he also has to make sure that Trey Lance prepares for the future. So because of that, I think the 49ers are trying to, yes, they're trying to have their cake and eat it too, but I think there is a way to do that. And it's what Kyle Shanahan illustrated, outlined, planned for during the preseason, even before that, probably when he was drawing up plays for Trey Lance flying home from Justin Fields' pro day. And that involves playing Trey Lance to a certain degree while still benefiting from the stability that Jimmy Garoppolo can bring the team. And theoretically, that means that Trey Lance's play time will increase as time goes along. You look at the 49ers roster before the bye week, heading into that break, and you look at it now, they're a little bit healthier. In fact, it's probably a good thing to look at the actual depth chart right now so we can go through the quick update. Position by position, I put Trey Lance here in brown because he's not back at practice right now. That's another issue for the 49ers. I mean, the reason for a deep QB room is to insulate yourself against injury. Well, the 49ers recently had several of them in the quarterback room. Garoppolo was back at practice on Monday. Lance was not. So Lance is in brown right now. Garoppolo is your only healthy quarterback on the 53-man roster, with Nate Sudfeld being a likely or almost certain practice squad activation if Lance isn't ready. But in the running back room, big news is that JaMycal Hasty's window to return off injured reserve has opened. So there's a very good chance that JaMycal Hasty is back. If that does indeed happen, then in the running back room, you are going to have Elijah Mitchell, who is feeling a lot better with his shoulder now, as the top guy. I think Hasty is your number 2 and Trey Sermon is your number 3. 49ers have put Jaquez Patrick back on the practice squad after they cut him. Trenton Cannon is still on the team, probably a special teams guy, but you have to acknowledge that your running back room looks a lot better as far as rushing productivity with Hasty in there. above Sermon. And Sermon, I think is starting to get a feel for things. I think he'll still get some carries for the 49ers. But as far as ready to play right now, ready to deliver those rushing yards over expectation right now, JaMycal Hasty's your guy. Speaking of rushing yards over expectation, this is my article about the 49ers offense. And you look here, just take a look at this table. This is what the 49ers need out of their running backs room to have that solid backbone offensively, I think, to have that identity. Because right now the complaint is, and I think it's a valid one, the 49ers are struggling to find that consistent identity offensively. Well, the darker the blue, the better this metric. It's rushing yards over expectation. NFL Next Gen Stats uses tracking data to determine how many yards a running back should get on every carry. The darker the blue, the further above average. You could see how well the 49ers did, not only in 2020, but also in 2019 behind their top guys, Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Raheem Mostert was in the top 10 of the league. Jeff Wilson wasn't that far behind him with his 2020 numbers. I should have put Wilson's on there for 2019, but I couldn't because he didn't play quiet enough. Remember, this was the Mostert, Coleman, Breida show in 2019, and all those guys had good marks as far as rushing yards over expectation. Wilson was good in his spot duty. Well, you move to 2021, and you can see that Mitchell and Sermon are performing a little bit better than average, but not quite as well as the backs in 2019 and 2020. And this is no reason to panic because both of those guys are rookies. I think the productivity curve for both of these guys will trend upwards as this season goes along. But there was a reason why the 49ers really wanted Raheem Mostert healthy at the start of this year, why they really wanted Jeff Wilson healthy at the start of this year, and why they carried JaMycal Hasty on that initial 53-man roster, because they thought that some rushing specialty experience would allow them to get further into the blue, and with more rushing efficiency, they'd be able, everything else would fall in place. Better play action, better pass protection. You take the steam out of opposing pass rushes if you can run effectively. But the problem is that Raheem Mostert went down week one. Jeff Wilson went down getting up out of his chair in the locker room during OTAs. And of course, JaMycal Hasty also got hurt for the 49ers early in this season. So the load has been on Elijah Mitchell. It's been on Trey Sermon. And of course, Mitchell also got hurt for the 49ers. So it's been a tough sledding, really, to find the capable bodies in that backfield. Now that Mitchell and Sermon are both healthy, both improving as rookies from week to week, and with Jeff Wilson expected back in about a month, and with JaMycal Hasty expected back against the Colts this weekend, I do think the 49ers will be in better position to make a run offensively because they'll have that, potential firepower in the rushing game that they really need, and a lot of other stuff will potentially follow suit. Receiver room. This is where, I think the most interesting, controversial discussion, aside from the quarterback room, is happening right now. You have Brandon Ayuk. You have Deebo Samuel, who's still playing really well. You have Sanu, Sherfield, Benjamin, Juwan Jennings. It's all about Brandon Ayuk, though, right? If the 49ers are going to get to where they need to be, Brandon Ayuk is going to have to produce at the level that he's capable of producing at. This is not a question of the doghouse or a lack of work ethic for Brandon Ayuk. The 49ers have been happy with that. He put on 10 pounds of muscle this offseason. He's been working his tail off to get to a place where his body is better able to insulate himself against some hits. That also allowed Brandon Ayuk to win the punt returner job for the 49ers. But unfortunately for him, and unfortunately for them, Brandon Ayuk just flat out is not playing as well as he did last season. This is the main stat that I think that we should look at. This is separation, also based on NFL Next Gen Stats tracking data. Average separation per route. Deebo Samuel, 3.5 yards. Mohamed Sanu, 3.3 yards. George Kittle, when he's in there, 3.7 yards. Look at Brandon. Those are all blue, so they're above average. Look at Brandon Ayuk, 1.7 yards, below the NFL average in average separation. And he has 8 catches, only 8 catches on the season. I think 7 of those 8 catches have come in extremely tight windows where it took a really good throw from either Jimmy Garoppolo or Trey Lance to get it there. And it did take a really good physical catch from Brandon Ayuk to make the play. And perhaps that's Brandon Ayuk's added 10 pounds of muscle on display, being able to grab that touchdown pass from against the Packers in the end zone, being able to catch that third down out from Trey Lance with a cornerback draped all over him. Those are all really impressive efforts from Brandon Ayuk. But the problem is that the separation in general has been down. And it's clear that the 49ers believe that there's been a regression from Ayuk from season 1 to season 2. And they are, to be honest, a little perplexed by this. This is just me tossing speculation into the air, and I'm always very clear when I do toss speculation into the air, so it's not, aggregated and reported as fact by some of these other sites. But I think that sometimes when you see a little bit of added weight, a little bit of added strength, it could mean a little bit of decreased explosiveness. And Ayuk was a separator in 2020. It's not good when he had 2.8 yards of average separation in 2020, and that number is down to 1.7 in 2021. So maybe it's just, taking some extra conditioning from Ayuk to get used to the new weight. Maybe he's going to come out of this bye week gangbusters and start separating a lot. Maybe it's a confidence issue, and maybe it's everything. Maybe it's those two things combined. But when that separation, when the confidence returns, I think that Kyle Shanahan is going to be calling more plays to him. And, it's a chicken and egg thing, too. And a lot of people are right online. Maybe Kyle Shanahan needs to force feed Brandon Ayuk some touches, some jet sweeps, some crossing, easy screens, some crossing patterns. I don't know, whatever gets him the football. Maybe that force feeding needs to happen to develop the confidence to allow him to play within his new body and to leverage that muscle to more than 8 catches for 90 yards. Whatever the solution is, Kyle Shanahan, Brandon Ayuk better be hard at work on it over the course of this bye week, because that's extremely important for the 49ers offense to reach its ceiling. Tight end position. No George Kittle there because he's on IR. So you got Werner, you've got Dwelly, Jordan Matthews on the team, Tanner Hudson's there. Maybe they activate him from the practice squad. While Kittle is not in there, while he's still on IR here for a couple more games, it's even more imperative that receiving balance is taken more seriously, and that Deebo Samuel is not the only guy catching passes. Ayuk needs to step up for the 49ers. He is the logical option to make sure this passing offense is balanced while they hope to get George Kittle back to 100%. Offensive line is super interesting to me because if you heard John Lynch talk the other day, there was some excitement about Aaron Banks. Maybe the narrative there is starting to turn around a bit, at least as far as the talk coming out of the 49ers building. John Lynch said unequivocally that he expects Aaron Banks to contribute to the 49ers this year. Now, unless John Lynch is predicting an injury up front to Daniel Brunskill, Laken Tomlinson, that sounds to me like Aaron Banks is making some progress. The 49ers needed to get his body ready because he was a bigger guy than normal for this movement-heavy outside zone scheme. They needed to get him, really familiarized with the playbook so he's ready to hop in there, plug and play, and not, just be detonated by an interior defensive lineman. But the issue is that Daniel Brunskill has been detonated by interior defensive linemen already this season. So the 49ers, they drafted Aaron Banks in the second round to fix the issues at right guard and interior line sooner rather than later. So I think for them to reach their ultimate goals, this is something I said, before the season started. I thought they needed Aaron Banks in there starting games at right guard. And potentially that happens sooner rather than later if you listen to John Lynch's most recent comments. That's the most I can say about that. I really don't know anymore, but keep your eyes out for Aaron Banks. I still stand, by my statement in the preseason where I said that, as that second round pick of Aaron Banks goes, so will, the larger prospects of the 49ers offensive line. And I think that's been exactly right so far. The weakness for this line has been at right guard, maybe a little bit at right tackle. Mike McGlinchey wasn't as good against Arizona, but right guard is the weakness. I think Daniel Brunskill's a fine player. I just don't think that he's a guy that you're fitting a square pair into, or you're trying to fit a square peg into a round hole if you're trying to make him a starting right guard instead of the utility quality plug and play anywhere offensive lineman that he is. I mean, Brunskill was a former tight end at San Diego State, and you're trying to have him block Aaron Donald, Fletcher Cox, Javon Hargrave at times against Philadelphia, Kenny Clark against the Packers. I mean, these are all plus interior rushers. And I think that the 49ers drafted Aaron Banks for the express purpose of being able to handle those guys with his size. So hopefully for their sake, he's in a lot better shape now than he was at the start of the season, and they could plug him in there and start seeing some improvement up front. Defensive line. Now I can get to go to my favorite piece. This is the defensive progress report for the 49ers. Blue is good, red is bad. This is the 49ers D line performance so far this year. You got Bosa getting it done. How about Armstead getting it done? And, with DeForest Buckner coming to town, I included him here too. Pressure rate for Armstead over 13%. Pressure rate for Buckner, 8.8%. I know they play different positions, although Armstead does like the rush from the inside. But Armstead is outplaying Bosa. Not Bosa. No, nobody on the 49ers is outplaying Bosa. Pardon the slip there. Armstead is outplaying Buckner this year. Armstead did not outplay Buckner in 2020, so that didn't look good for the 49ers, although it wasn't a trade and a decision between Armstead and Buckner for the 49ers. It was Armstead plus about $22 million of cap space over 2 seasons and a first round draft pick that the 49ers used on Javon Kinlaw. And with the extra money, they were able to, make sure that they signed guys like Fred Warner, George Kittle, Trent Williams. It wasn't a one-for-one player swap. So anybody trying to oversimplify that is just not an analyzing the football roster construction situation accurately. But, in a way, symbolically, the 49ers definitely want to make sure that they lose as little productivity as possible up front. You're going to lose something when you lose DeForest Buckner, but with the pick of Javon Kinlaw, which is something I'm going to talk about in a separate video this week when I discuss Buckner more in depth, the pick of Kinlaw was meant to pick up at least the run stopping slack that left when DeForest Buckner departed to the Colts. Because if you do that, you're able to lock in on the pass rush. If you're not a sieve against the run, and I think the 49ers were against the interior run early on against Detroit, for example, when Kinlaw was unavailable, you're unable to unleash the pass rush to its full effectiveness. So I think that if you look at this, Javon Kinlaw, he's getting it done against the run, 60.6% run D success rate. When he's in there, it's like an NBA plus minus stats. So there is some leeway there as far as error accuracy, but it's good. That's above average. It's better than a guy like Zach Kerr, who's just getting blasted off of the ball against Detroit. So Kinlaw's getting that done. The pass rushing has to get better, but you don't expect him to quite be DeForest Buckner. Where you can make up for that is if Eric Armstead surges at 2019 levels. And that's exactly what's happening right now. In 2019, Bosa was at 15% in terms of pressure rate. He led the NFL. Armstead was at like 12%. So Armstead's even better right now. Bosa's a bit worse because teams are chipping him. Teams are giving him extra attention. 49ers have to find a way to get this 13% up back to the old 15% for Bosa. And, I don't think it's going to be a problem when you have Chris Kasarik and D'Amico Ryan scheming things coming out of the bye week. But what's important is that they have that support for Nick Bosa. And that's Eric Armstead with this 13% number. That pressure rate's been nice for Eric Armstead. He's also been good against the run, and the team has excelled against the run when he's on the field. Dee Ford, that's found money for the 49ers. He was up at 14% back in 2019. Maybe he still gets there, but Dee Ford isn't quite as good as he used to be, but he's still, a difference maker for the 49ers this season. What San Francisco really needs is this. They need better play from Samson Ebukam. 4.3% pressure rate, poor performance against the run when he's on the field. Neither of those two things will cut it. If you get more from Samson Ebukam, it takes pressure off of everybody, especially Bosa, so he can keep on doing work regardless of who is on the other edge. And you may even see a pass rushing improvement from Javon Kinlaw on the inside, Contavious Street if he's playing. A guy like Maurice Hurst, who's been great against the run so far for the 49ers, maybe he starts to see more pass rushing success. The defensive line is not what it was in 2019. They are a tick below that, although they have shown flashes of immense potential. And I think to reach that immense potential more consistently, they need more from Ebukam. That'll allow, just like I talk about domino effects at other positions, that Ebukam thing will allow domino effect up front. I think that allows you to move Bosa around more. That allows Bosa to get back to where he was. And maybe Dee Ford gets better as the season goes along because he's been playing a little tentative so far, but the sack rate is great for Dee Ford. 81 snaps, 3 sacks. 49ers have to be over the moon with what they've gotten from him, but they're not over the moon with what they've gotten from Samson Ebukam, and I think that's the next step for the pass rush. Linebacker room for the 49ers. These guys had a great 2020. They're not having a great 2021. Case in point, here you go. Warner, you could see that there's been a little bit of a drop off as far as coverage, and he's tackling a bit worse. Greenlaw got hurt so early on that it's hard to read into the missed tackle percentage, but he was one of the best tacklers in football in 2020, and the 49ers need that back. Al-Shaair was way better as far as missed tackle percentage and coverage in 2020. Now, I do think that maybe the stats could be deceptive with Al-Shaair right now because he's been flying to the football here in 2021. But still, he's not as important of a linebacker as these top two, unless he moves up to the top two, which he's had to do with people being hurt. So there's no coincidence that the 49ers just re-signed Michael Kendricks, the veteran. Ultimately, though, they need all-pro play out of Fred Warner, and that's more than just these metrics. They need Warner to make game-changing plays, takeaways. The 49ers are currently number 31 in the NFL in takeaways, and despite the fact that the defense has been sturdy, that just won't cut it, especially with the offense being inconsistent, with it being a work in progress. There is a need for the defense to really take the ball away, to find out how to grab an interception when that ball's in the air, to find out how to rip that ball out like Dante Johnson did against the Arizona Cardinals. And a lot of that onus falls on Fred Warner. Fred Warner is the captain. He's the guy with the radio in his helmet. He's the guy that made so many big strips and interceptions already in his career. So far, none of that from Fred Warner. He needs to do it. Then Dre Greenlaw can be your sturdy tackling machine when he gets back. Bottom line, though, is the 49ers need better play from the linebacker room, period. So far, that room has regressed, and I think that's the key right there. You could see that could be the key for the ball hawking, for the takeaways. Now, on the aggregate, the defense has been good, and one reason that they've been good, especially as of late, is I think that they have actually gotten some decent level production from their defensive backs. And maybe I should make this one big again. That's the wrong page right here. Let's take a look right here. Here you go. The defensive backs for the 49ers. Yes, there is some red on there, but there's also a lot of blue. And one thing that we should notice is that there's been good tackling across the board in the defensive backfield out of the veteran cornerbacks and Dante Johnson, who's obviously a veteran cornerback, who's been the replacement at nickel for K'Wan Williams. Tart doesn't have a great tackling rate right now, but Jimmy Ward hasn't missed a tackle yet this season. And I think Mosley is playing his best football as an NFL player. And I think that Josh Norman has definitely played acceptably. Again, the caveat is he has to stay available. And sometimes that's easier said than done for a 33-year-old player going on 34. But for the most part, especially against the Cardinals, who run the air raid, who are averaging 35 points a game against everybody else, not named the 49ers, against them, D'Amico Ryan's defense allowed only 17 points. And your secondary has to be doing decently well to allow only 17 to an air raid team, otherwise averaging 35. So it's clear that the 49ers are holding the ship together. I don't care if they're using super glue or scotch tape or whatever. So far, things are holding together enough on the back end in the secondary for people to have to at least acknowledge that something is going right. Now, will it continue to go right? I think it depends on health. K'Wan Williams should be back this week. The 49ers are expecting that. So when you look at this at nickel back, the 49ers are going to have their man Williams back by all indications. That means Dante Johnson can be more of a plug and play, cornerback, secondary depth kind of guy. And you allow Norman and Mosley to do their thing at corner. I think they trust Jaquiski Tart at safety. Talanoa Hufanga is starting to get some more playing time in some dime packages and other situations. And then obviously Jimmy Ward is a steady player back there. All things combined, since those players should be able to cohesively work with the pass rush, since you have a certain floor there that is not alarmingly low, if you can stay healthy, then the 49ers just need to turn all their attention to picking off some passes. They really need to generate some takeaways. And then I think that this defense is going to reach its potential. But in the big picture for the 49ers, the defense, I think, is locked and ready to go. The defense has made strides. We saw a good game, an overpowering first half against Seattle, and then an overall good game against Arizona. And it's the offense that needs to play catch-up for the 49ers. It's the offense behind Jimmy Garoppolo. That's and all, for all intents and purposes, that's what's likeliest against the Colts. It's the offense that's going to have to dictate game flow, get back in that saddle, provide the complementary support for the defense that hasn't been there consistently yet. And when that happens, this 49ers team right now still ranks number 10 in DVOA. They're the top. They might even be higher than number 10. Why don't we take a look at where the 49ers are at DVOA? Football Outsiders. I actually think that this is going to be a situation where they're the top the top 2 and 3 team, because Seattle is now 2-4. They definitely didn't help themselves with the loss to Pittsburgh this week, and obviously they don't have Russell Wilson available anymore. So it's a situation for the 49ers where I'm almost certain, and for some reason I can't get on Football Outsiders right now. So, here we go. Take a look at this team rankings and then share the screen with you. This is, this stuff is, they don't have the, no, Seattle's still number 9 ahead of the 49ers at number 10. But anyway, now technically the 49ers are the top 2 and 3 team, where the average rank of 2 and 3 teams in DVOA, which is our advanced efficiency measurement, is all the way down to number 17. What does that suggest? It suggests the 49ers are better than their record, or that they'll play better than their record moving forward. But moving forward, they've got some really tough games. The toughest of those aren't coming up for another 3 weeks. But in the next 2 weeks, you have this one against Indianapolis, number 15 DVOA. And then you go to Chicago, number 20. So it's 49ers number 10 against number 15 and then number 20. Following that, it is a 2-game homestand against the Cardinals and the Rams, number 2 and number 3. That is going to be tough, but we saw the 49ers just almost knock off Arizona despite a very incomplete offensive performance with Trey Lance at quarterback. Presumably, if things continue, trending in the right direction health-wise, which obviously is no guarantee, the 49ers should be more ready to challenge Arizona at home when they visit in 3 weeks, and then the Rams after that. But we shouldn't cross that bridge until we actually get to it. Right now, it's just time for the 49ers to try to get a win. And I think on paper, they should be able to do it against Indianapolis. On paper, they should be able to do it at Chicago the next week. And this team is 2 and 3 with 12 games to go. You win these next 2 games, all of a sudden that flips, right? You're 3 and 2, and you have 2 games against 2 top 5 teams coming in, and a chance to really assert yourself if you're the 49ers as a true playoff contender. But one game at a time. That's how the 49ers have to treat this. I just went through the entire roster. When I look at that, I see talent, and I see, a potential chance to turn complementary football into an actual thing on the field. Whether or not they do it is a different question. If they don't, then you can really start grumbling about, what's Kyle Shanahan doing? Why didn't he set the team up, better for this kind of success? But we have to treat these seasons as marathons and not sprints. The 1988 49ers in Bill Walsh's final and most stressful season had a losing record some of the time, had a 6-5 record, I think, going into the stretch run. And that stretch run, they caught fire. They were actually alternating quarterbacks that year between Joe Montana and Steve Young. But once they caught fire under Joe Montana, they ended up winning the Super Bowl. And Bill Walsh was so stressed out after it all happened that he retired anyway. But still, the point is, that was a long journey. And at this point of that journey, people were calling for everybody's head, right? So right now, it's still not time to call for anybody's head, because we need to figure out who exactly the 49ers are. The 49ers need to figure out who exactly they are. They're slightly on the mend. They have some weaker competition coming in, and then it gets really hard in 3 weeks. Take it 1 week at a time. Let's see what they could do against the Indianapolis Colts on Sunday Night Football. So I do think that this team can make a little bit of a run coming up, and we'll see if they can prove that on the field. Everybody take care. Have a great Tuesday.